Most times it makes sense why an NBA player's career comes to an end, whether that be the player just getting too old to play in the league or poor performances. Those are just a couple of reasons why somebody might leave the NBA. But today I want to take a look at some players who were well known and then seemingly just disappeared from the league in the blink of an eye. Starting it off with DeMarcus Cousins. In his prime, he was one of the best centers in the entire league with the Sacramento Kings. The problem was that Sacramento's front office was never able to put a contending team around him. As a result of this, Cousins was then traded to the Pelicans. This was a very exciting trade because it paired Cousins with Anthony Davis, and it set the Pelicans up with the best front court in the entire league, which was a matchup nightmare for any team that they played against. However, in what went on to be his final season with New Orleans, Cousins suffered a torn Achilles. After signing with the Golden State Warriors the following season, Cousins proved that he was still a talented starting center, even after going through such a serious injury. But while he was able to finish out the regular season healthy, he suffered a torn quad in game number 2 of the first round of the playoffs. Just a little side note here, my dad actually tore his quad tendon last year, and of course he's not in NBA playing shape, but still, that's a career-ending injury for most. It takes super long to rehab it, and it's very rare. I believe I read that 1 in 100,000 people tear their quad, while an ACL tear is more like 1 in 3,500 people. Cousins' run of awful injuries was not over yet, though. They continued throughout the following season when he joined the Los Angeles Lakers. During a pickup game in the offseason, Cousins unfortunately suffered a torn ACL that kept him sidelined for that entire season. Following this injury, he transitioned into a backup role, and while it might sound like a career coming to an end right here for Cousins, he proved himself to be a capable backup center. In the following 2 seasons, he played for 4 different teams, averaging nearly double-digit points off the bench at each stop. Along with this, he was still a good rebounder. In what's likely going to be his final playoff run in the NBA, he served as a backup center for the Denver Nuggets in the 2021-22 season. In the 5 games that he played in, Cousins averaged 10.6 points and 3.4 rebounds per game in just 11.4 minutes. While he was given a chance to work out with the Lakers during the 2022-23 season, this did not end up with him receiving a contract offer. So since then, Cousins has been playing in the Baloncesto Superior Nacional League, where he played very well, and then in the Taiwan T1 League. Since joining the Taiwan Beer Leopards, Cousins has stated that he would love a real answer why he hasn't received an NBA contract, and fans are still kind of scratching their heads on how no team could find a spot on their roster for him. I mean, he's killing it over there right now. The only reasonable explanation is that teams were worried about his extensive injury history. However, taking a look at some of the other centers that are currently taking up roster spots in the league, it is kind of confusing how Boogie disappeared from the league so early. Cousins ended his NBA career, up to this point at least, unless he comes back, with a 2010-11 All-Rookie selection, 4 All-Star appearances, and 2 All-NBA nods. Next up, I want to talk about another center, Dwight Howard. In his peak, Howard was the best center that the league had to offer and led the Orlando Magic to an NBA Finals appearance without the support of another superstar on the roster. However, once his run with the Magic came to an end, the perception of Howard began to decline. He was a part of a blockbuster trade that gave him the elite teammates that he was lacking throughout his time in Orlando. As a member of the Los Angeles Lakers, he shared the court with Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, and Steve Nash. On paper, this was a juggernaut of a team that gave LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh in Miami a real run for their money. However, things did not go to plan for them. The 4 stars did not mesh well on the court, and Howard took the brunt of the blame for this. It became very clear that he needed the ball in his hands to be a truly impactful player on the offensive side of the ball, and he was not going to get the touches that he needed in a Kobe Bryant-led offense. After a 1-year stint in LA, he was off to the Houston Rockets, where he joined another star in James Harden. While things went well in their first season together, with Howard getting a few more looks at the basket than he did in Los Angeles, he saw a lesser role in his final 2 seasons with the team. Along with this, in the 2014-15 season, nagging knee injuries led to him missing half of the season. Following his run in Houston, Howard played for 5 teams in the next 6 seasons. He served as a starter for the Hornets and the Wizards. However, he was only able to play in 9 games the entire year with Washington due to back and glute issues. The following season, he played a big role in Los Angeles' championship run in the bubble. This was the first time in his career that Dwight played as a backup, and he transitioned extremely well into that role. After getting a ring in LA, he went to the Sixers to back up Embiid. Once again, he thrived in a backup role and made a return to LA the next season. Even with Dwight starting in 27 out of the 60 games that he played in Los Angeles and averaging 6.2 points and 5.9 rebounds in 16.2 minutes per game, this was his final season in the NBA. Following the 2021-22 season, Howard signed in the Taiwan T1 League. Similar to Cousins, Dwight was playing at a very high level at the backup center position. However, the same excuse of injury history and iffy defense that could justify Boogie not finding a roster spot doesn't really apply to Howard. While it's almost guaranteed that he's not going to make a return to the NBA at this point, it remains a mystery why he was forced to pursue a career in the T1 League to begin with. He was 36 years old at the time during his last NBA season, but the fact that he was playing really well overseas recently makes me think that he definitely deserved a spot for a couple more years at the very least. Dwight finished his career with 8 All-Star appearances, 8 All-NBA selections, a 2004 to 2005 All-Rookie Team nod, 5 All-Defensive Team spots, won 5 rebounding titles, 2 block titles, 1 NBA championship, and 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Moving on to yet another center that you might have thought disappeared from the league way too fast. Hassan Whiteside's NBA career did not get off to the most glorious start. He was drafted in the 2nd round by the Kings and only saw the floor in 19 games during his first 2 seasons in the league. The following season, he spent time playing in the D-League and a Lebanese professional league. His future in the NBA became even more uncertain the following season, as he didn't even get a chance to showcase his talents in the D-League. Instead, Whiteside spent time playing for another team in a Lebanese Pro League, and then with a Chinese team. However, after putting together some impressive seasons overseas, his hard work finally paid off. He was given a spot on the Miami Heat and did not disappoint. While it took him 2 seasons to work his way up in the rotation and establish himself as the team's starting center, he proved himself as one of the best defensive centers that the league had to offer. After 2 seasons as Miami's starting center, he saw a reduced role in the 2018-19 season with the emergence of Bam Adebayo, and he saw the writing on the wall at that point and moved on from Miami the following offseason to sign with the Portland Trail Blazers. He had a very solid season in Portland, I must say, and led the league in blocks per game for the 2nd time in his career. However, he was on the move yet again very soon after, making a return to Sacramento in the 2020-21 season. He saw a majorly reduced role with the Kings this time around and spent his final season in the league with the Utah Jazz. In Utah, he served as a backup to Rudy Gobert. He averaged 8.2 points, 7.6 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per game while shooting a career-high 65.2% from the field. Despite this, he was somehow unable to find a roster spot the following season and was forced to sign in the Baloncesto Superior Nacional League. After a season over there, he announced his retirement from basketball. This is yet another case of a center playing at a high level in a backup role and suddenly not being able to find a place in the league at all. In his final season, he ranked 8th in the league in blocks per game. The only real case that could be made here is he had a real lack of floor spacing ability, and that made him a liability. However, we can still see countless examples of big men in the league just like this: Nick Claxton, Jared Allen, or even Ivica Zubac, who all have similar games to Whiteside and still play like traditional centers. There were a lot of people talking about how his attitude issues could be a cause for his early departure from the league, and the fact that he was inconsistent at times, but what do you guys think? Whiteside finished his time in the league with 1 rebounding title, 2 block titles, and an all-defensive team selection in the 2015-16 season. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our first non-center on this list, Kemba Walker. He was drafted by the Charlotte Bobcats, and during his 8 years with the team, established himself as arguably the best player in franchise history. However, similar to the case that current Charlotte point guard LaMelo Ball finds himself in, when healthy of course, the front office was just unable to put a quality team around him. Despite Walker's individual success on that team, he never had the help around him to make a deep playoff run. Pair that with his multiple knee injuries starting in the 2014-15 season, and then tearing that same meniscus again next season was probably writing on the wall for later on in his career of what to expect. But his luck with teammates at least changed in the 2018 offseason when he was traded to Boston. Following a failed experiment with Kyrie Irving on the Celtics, Walker was added to the team in hopes of replacing him. He did have 2 pretty good seasons in Boston, but once again was plagued by different knee injuries, and it was also clear that they were not going to win a championship with him on the roster, so he was eventually traded to the Thunder. After he was waived by the Thunder, he signed with his hometown New York Knicks, where he had a very interesting season and fell victim to head coach Tom Thibodeau's rotational decisions. I will say in these current playoffs that we're watching right now in 2024, Tom Thibodeau has made so many adjustments to his rotation, and it's miles above what it used to be. Now, following an injury to Derrick Rose, though, Walker secured his position as the team's starting point guard. He started in all 37 games that he played in during that 2021-22 season, but he saw his year come to a premature end following yet another knee injury. Shockingly, following a season in which he spent time as a full-time starter, the 2022-23 season went down as Walker's final year in the league. Following his departure from the NBA, Walker signed with AS Monaco, a EuroLeague club, in the LNB Pro A League. Walker finished his time in the NBA with 4 All-Star appearances and an All-NBA selection in the 2018-19 season. And although Kemba's knees were the main reason why he couldn't find another NBA roster to join after the 2022-23 season, this next player up was a little bit more questionable on why he exited the league after 10 seasons. Lance Stevenson was a second-round pick, and it took him some time to get his NBA career going with the Indiana Pacers. Didn't play in over 45 games until his 3rd season in the league, but once he got his chance to put his talents on full display, he proved himself as a pesky defender and a solid rebounder at the shooting guard position. Arguably the best run of his career took place during his final 2 seasons in his first stint with the Pacers. Over this stretch, he was an important piece of the team that gave the Miami Heat a run for their money in the playoffs. Over the next 3 seasons, he bounced from team to team, playing for the Hornets, Clippers, Grizzlies, Pelicans, and Timberwolves before finding himself back where it all began with the Pacers. During this 3-season run, Stevenson served mainly as a bench player, and a big part of that was because he struggled to develop a 3-point shot. After spending the entirety of the 2017-18 season with the Pacers, Stevenson signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. However, following this season with the Lakers, it appeared as if Stevenson's time in the NBA had run its course. He was forced to sign in the Chinese Basketball Association. After spending a season in China and some time in the G League, Stevenson was given another shot in the league with the Atlanta Hawks, who brought him on a 10-day contract. However, following his 10-day with the Hawks, he made a 3rd stop with the Pacers. In the 40 games that he spent in Indiana to finish out the season, he was playing some of the best basketball that he played in years, averaging 9.3 points and 3.9 assists per game in only 18.6 minutes per game, while shooting 45.8% from the field. But despite this being a strong showing for a player coming off the bench, Stevenson has somehow not been able to find another team willing to give him an offer, and it spelled what likely was the end of his NBA career. But I will say he is trying to make a comeback and was a part of the Iowa Wolves G League team for this current season. Kind of hard to believe that no team could use him at least off the bench for defensive purposes. From one Stevenson to another, Deshaun Stevenson was a late 1st-round pick by the Utah Jazz in the 2000 NBA draft. This was once again a case of the player not starting right away though, but once he finally claimed the starting role in the 2003-2004 season, he was traded at the deadline. And yet again, it took Stevenson some time to work his way up the rotation as a new member of the Orlando Magic, starting in only 27 of the 55 games that he played in during his first full season with the team. He began to find a role for himself with the Magic, and things started to look like they were heading in the right direction in the 2005-2006 season. But he sought out greener pastures and signed with the Wizards soon after. Arguably the best 2-year stretch of his entire career came in his first 2 years with the Wizards. During this run, he shot 38.9% from 3 while averaging 11.2 points and starting in all 164 games that the Wizards played. However, throughout the remainder of his time in Washington, he began to lose his shooting touch, and as a result of this, his minutes were cut down. In the 2009 to 2010 season, Stevenson was dealt to the Mavericks, where he once again worked his way up the rotation and became a regular starter during his final season with the team. But in the 2011 to 2012 season, he signed with the New Jersey Nets. This was a very rough season for Stevenson, and he was traded to the Atlanta Hawks the following year. In what went on to be his final season in the NBA, Stevenson was playing a solid brand of basketball, and it appeared that he had found his role as an outside shooter. He started in 31 of the 56 games that he played in and shot 36.4% from deep. Despite this, he was unable to find another opportunity in the league. He waited patiently for a team to call him for 3.5 seasons before finally choosing to call it a career. With Stevenson starting in nearly half of the games that he appeared in during his final season, this is another situation where it's kind of surprising how he didn't get any offer from any team. He had already proven that he was more than willing to take a minimum deal, and with him coming off a season in which he shot as well as he did from behind the arc, he would have been a very low-risk, high-reward type of signing. Stevenson ended his career as a one-time NBA champion though, so at least he has that. Now, rounding off this list is Stephon Marbury. He got his career off to a hot start, finishing second in the Rookie of the Year voting in the 1996 to 97 season. During his time with the Timberwolves, he was developing into a very promising player and an elite scorer. However, he did not remain in Minnesota for too long and was dealt to the New Jersey Nets just 2.5 seasons into his career. He had a great run with the Nets, making an All-NBA team and an All-Star game in his 2.5 seasons with that team. Even with Marbury finding his stride with the Nets, he was then traded to the Suns, and in Phoenix, he made a return to the All-NBA team but was not kept around long there either, spending another 2.5 years with that franchise. His next deal landed him with the New York Knicks, where he spent 4.5 seasons, and in this time, Marbury continued to be a quality starting point guard and a great scorer. Before the 2009 season began, though, after a head coaching change, Marbury was told that he wasn't going to be the primary starting point guard, and the two sides decided to reach a contract buyout. He was not a fan of Mike D'Antoni at all, and he blamed him for being the reason why he ended up leaving New York. Now, after clearing waivers, he signed with the Boston Celtics, and in Boston, Marbury came off the bench, only starting in 4 out of the 23 games that he played in. This was a very rough stretch for him, as he only shot 34.2% from the field, 24% from 3, and only averaged 3.8 points per game. Now, he had a chance to rejoin the Celtics on a minimum deal, but Marbury ultimately turned down that offer to take the year off and focus on business. To his surprise, he never received another chance to make a return to the NBA. This was far from the end of his basketball career. He spent the next 9 years playing in the Chinese Basketball Association, becoming one of the most popular players in the country to this day. Do you guys remember NBA Ballers, by the way, the video game? I think it was on PS2 and Xbox, I believe, with Marbury on the cover. That is still, to this day, one of my favorite games of all time. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, want me to make a part 2, or want me to make a little bit of a spin-off to this video, maybe players that just disappeared when they were in their 20s or something like that, let me know in the comments section below, and I'll catch you in the next one.